Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on a webinar for the Villanova University Graduate Tax Program. We just opened the webinar, so I know you're all heading in right now from the waiting room. My name is Megan Petsko, and I'm the director in the Graduate Tax Program here at Villanova. We'll kick things off in just a few minutes and allow some time for folks to join. But in the interim, I'm just going to go over some quick housekeeping items. We are recording the webinar, and we will make it available on our YouTube playlist on the Villanova University YouTube channel. And a link to that will be sent out in the coming business days. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to send them through. On the bottom of your screen, you should see a QA button and a chat button. You can use either of them to send questions through to our team. I'm joined today by our two assistant directors of admission who are going to be monitoring the chat and monitoring the Q&A and then asking questions that we collect from the audience during today's session. They are Catherine Coker and Timothy Dinan. And you are automatically on mute and your cameras are automatically turned off. So you don't have to worry about changing any of your settings there. That's a default for the Zoom webinar. So I'll give it just another minute and then we'll kick things off about our program here at Villanova and dig into the Q&A. All right, so we do like to keep these pretty timely. It will not go over the 2 o'clock hour. We respect your time frame and thank you again for joining us today. If this is your lunch hour you're giving up or just carving time into your day, thank you again for joining us. And please feel free to send those questions throughout the program and we'll make sure we cover them during the Q&A portion. All right, so to start things off, I'm just going to give a quick overview of our program. The graduate tax program here at Villanova has actually been in place for 41 years. It'll be 42 this coming September. It started in 1980 here at the Villanova University Charles Widger School of Law, and it has never veered from its original intent, which was to be an interdisciplinary program where lawyers, business professionals, and accountants would learn from and with each other in the classroom and would be primarily offered to a part-time working professional audience. The students in the program have always been mainly part-time adult learners who are, working a full-time job during the day, managing client, personal, family obligations, and then fitting in school on a part-time basis by attending class, usually one night a week, and taking one class at a time. So the graduate tax program has 2 degree options within it, and then we also offer 3 certificates. Our Master of Taxation, or what we call the MT degree, are for those coming to us with an accounting or a business background. And who have a demonstrated interest in tax and in doing a tax practice or wanting to transition to a tax practice. We have students from an array of backgrounds who come to the MT in different aspects of tax in different phases in their career. Some have worked long careers in corporate tax and then want to change to estate planning. We really benefit from having such a diverse background within each of our degrees. Students who apply for the Master of Taxation need to either have passed a credential exam like the CPA exam or an enrolled agent exam or the CFP, a Certified Financial Planner exam, or they have the option of taking a GMAT or a GRE test. Usually our students who don't have as much work experience will take a GMAT or GRE or submit a test waiver. And our test waiver are for those who have a 3.0 cumulative GPA from their undergraduate degree and have 7 more years of direct tax experience, you can submit a waiver to remove that standardized test requirement. So we have students who use all 3 of those, who have, a CPA, CFP, or enrolled agent designation. Some who do take the standardized test, and many who submit that waiver as part of the application process. We also confer the Master of Laws in Taxation, or the LLM. This is for our attorneys who are went to a law school approved by the ABA or have completed requirements to practice law in a foreign country. Again, we have attorneys practicing from all over the country through all phases of their career who come to the program and looking for that heightened specialization that the LLM does offer. In addition to our 2 degree options, we have 3 certificates. Now, these can be completed as standalone certificates, or they can be combined with one of the degree options. We have the estate planning and employee benefit certificate that have both been around for decades, and the state and local tax certificate, which we brought on in 2017 and has become increasingly popular year over year, given all the changes to multi-state policies and compliance that happens, I feel like, on an ongoing basis. I will now get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty with our how the degree options are offered. The LLM in taxation, all LLMs require 24 credits. That's pretty universal across LLM degrees at various universities, because you're coming to the degree already having the Juris Doctor or the JD degree. So it consists of 9 classes, equating to 24 credits. 6 of those classes, as I'm going to get into in a moment, are our core classes, and then 3 are electives. You can complete the LLM in as few as 18 months, and you can mix and match between going online if you want to do online classes, or if you live locally, you can combine it with taking in-person and online classes. It is really up to you how you want to pursue your degree, by mixing and matching different formats and modalities, or completing it all online. Really, that is up to you as the student, and we offer the advising along the way to help you choose your path and your plan. The Master of Taxation is 30 credits and consists of 12 classes. 6 of those are the same core classes required in the LLM degree, and then it does require 3 additional electives for a total of 6 electives. So if you were a business professional or an accountant pursuing the Master of Taxation, it would be very easy to complement that degree with a certificate, as the 5 elective classes of the certificate can fit into the Master of Tax curriculum. The Master of Taxation can be completed in as few as 24 months, but I should point out that in both the LLM and Master of Taxation, you have up to 5 years to complete your degree. As I mentioned at the start of the webinar, our primary audience are part-time students who are full-time working professionals. And so we know that often things pop up, life intervenes, and you have to take maybe an unplanned break. And so we allow that 5-year length of time so that, if you need to take a leave of absence or just take a stop out of classes, maybe during your busy season, or, because of a life event, you can easily do so and then pick back up again. Most students finish between 2 and 3 years, but you do have 5 years to complete the degree. The certificate is 5 classes, as I just mentioned, equating to 10 credits, and that's for each of the certificates. And it usually takes about a year to get through the certificate, since it doesn't have the same requirements as the 2 degree options. Here we've laid out a sample of what the 2 years could look like in a year 1, year 2 snapshot. You'll see that the dark blue columns represent our core classes, the 6 core classes, which include Survey of Tax, Tax 1 and Tax 2, which are the federal individual income tax classes, Taxation of Corporations and Shareholders, partnership tax, and finally, professional practice and tax procedure. Those dark blue classes are required for both the LLM and MT students. Now, you do not have to take them in the path that you see lined out here. Most students will take Survey of Tax, Tax 1, and Tax 2, and then we'll decide to maybe start taking their electives or a different core requirement. Usually the prerequisite is to complete Tax 2, and then a wide array of electives will open up as well as the remaining core classes. As you'll see at the top, I mentioned that this utilizes an 8-week session where a flexible format is offered to students to concentrate on one course at a time. So this means within a traditional 16-week semester, students can still complete 2 classes at a time, but only need to take one course in each 8-week session. So for example, in our fall session, the weeks run end of August to mid-October, and the second session runs mid-October to mid-December. So you can take one course at the first half of fall that's maybe on a Thursday night, that finishes, and then later in the fall semester, take a second session course that will run October to mid-December on maybe a Wednesday night. That being said, I've been in my role here now for just about 6 years. I am a higher education professional by my background, but I've learned certainly a lot about the tax world in these 6 years. And I know from that experience that everyone has a different busy season. I came into this assuming, that the only time tax professionals were really busy was in the spring, and I found that I couldn't be more wrong. So I often have students that, need to take obviously the busy individual income tax season off, which is our late spring session, our March to end of April session, who sit out that one as that they have tremendous work responsibilities. But I also have many who have corporate tax deadlines and have to sit out the fall A session for the same thing. I have a lot of financial planners that are busy with year end and they can't take the fall B session. And then others who just want to catch their breath in the summer and want to be able to go on, a vacation with their family and sit out a session in the summer. That's part of why we built this 8-week session format, was so that our students could take a break without having to kick the can too far down the road of stretching out the time to completion. Sitting out an 8-week session isn't even missing a full semester. When we previously ran our program prior to 2014, we had students who, would take one class at a time, but it was the full 16 weeks. And it definitely took a longer time period to complete the degree. In this 8-week session format, we've condensed the material and how we deliver it, still has the same level of academic rigor, but gives the students more flexibility and convenience to take classes when it works for them in the format that works for them. And so I want to mention that a little bit more before we get into our Q&A session and talking about the formats we offer. We've offered in-person classes since the beginning, since 1980, and we continue to do so here in our law school building at Villanova's campus. And in 2014, we offered classes in the online format and via a learning management system. And in either format, either in person or online, you will always have a live synchronous class with a faculty member. Each week, there is a live class that's usually 60 to 90 minutes. It is offered usually on Wednesdays or Thursdays, either in person or online, guaranteeing that you have that real-time interaction with the professor. Now, we do use some pre-recorded lectures in our materials that add on to the class time experience, but they are in no way a substitute for the real-time experience with the faculty member each week. We do record all of our classes so that you can go back and listen to them to prepare for tests and final exams and to just be an added resource for you. But we find that it's just a critical component to the student's experience and to the academic excellence of our program, having that weekly live engagement with your instructor and your peers. So that is something that you can count on in the program as both taking classes in person, if that is something you want to do, or completing 100% of the program online. And I'll flip to the next slide here to answer some questions and answers. Both Catherine and Tim are going to collect the questions that you have, read them out loud, and then I'll be happy to answer them. So please send them through if you have any at this point in time. And Tim, I will pass it to you for the first question.
Great, thank you, Megan. We did have one question that said, can you please describe how the online program might encourage networking among participants?
That's a great question, and thank you for kicking us off. Yeah, and I can actually speak to that from my experience in the role that I've had here as director. Because of those, honestly, because of those weekly live sessions, it gives the class, real chances to communicate with one another. Often the faculty that you're learning from are current practitioners, they're current tax practitioners. We have full-time faculty, of course, here at the law school who teach in the program, but we have many adjuncts that are senior partners, principals, managing directors in their firms or their organizations who are teaching in the program. And that's, again, what we've had since the very beginning. We rely heavily on the tax professionals that the community is connected to teach in our program, so that we know you're getting the freshest material from those who are living and working in it every day. So often, the peers connect through their class time with each other. And then they also connect through study groups. So we have just seen organically that students will, get to know each other from taking classes, and will, make time outside of class to connect. Our faculty director, Professor Joy Moline, used to talk about that very often when she teaches her wealth tax class, that she encourages students to, make use of the availability of Zoom, that every student is granted a Zoom Pro license to be able to connect and have study group sessions with one another. And so, without us having to kind of create those spaces or create those, requirements to network, they're happening organically, just as they would if you were sitting in a classroom with someone. You get to know someone's expertise in a particular area of tax. You learn what part of the country they're from. Maybe, your organization does business there. Maybe you've had a state and local tax issue there and you want to get their insight. That sort of synergy is happening organically, as I've mentioned, through each of the classes and through the study sessions that, are created as a result of students getting to know one another. That was a great question. Thank you very much for posing it.
And we have one other that came in. If our employer offers a partial tuition reimbursement, can you discuss how that works?
Absolutely. As you can imagine, most of our students do have some sort of tuition reimbursement in some percentage. Again, that's how this has been since the program was incepted, that, employers are very supportive of sending their employees back for tax specialized learning. So this is sort of a twofold answer. Students will work with the bursar's office in order to, make the most use of their reimbursement. Some employers will reimburse after grades are in. So in those cases, usually the students will pay for the class up front and then get their grade, submit their grade to their employer. And then after they get the reimbursement, they use that to pay for the next class. That's a frequent pattern we see. Some employers will pay in advance and will work with the bursar directly for third-party billing. And usually there's like a letter that needs to be sent from our bursar to set up like wire transaction information. So either of those is typically how it works in terms of the mechanics of reimbursement. Where my team comes into play is through advising. So we often see that there's a limit to how much an employer will reimburse within a year. And we want to make sure students are obviously, using the full benefit of that, but not exceeding it if they're not looking to pay for it out of pocket. And so through advising, we'll say, okay, strategically take, these 3 classes. One of these classes is only offered, once a year. So you want to take this in the summer. And then we'll stretch out your other 2 classes over spring and fall. We tailor those plans to the individual. We don't have boilerplate plans for you to follow. We meet with you one-on-one, find out what your needs are, find out how your reimbursement works, and then we'll lay out a plan over the next 2 to 3 years of what that will look like for you, so that it maximizes the benefit from your company, but avoids you having to pay out of pocket if that's not part of your plan. That was a great question too. These are all good ways to get started.
We have a few more. Next one is, what career support do you provide for experienced lawyers looking to build knowledge base to transition to another area of tax practice?
That's a great question. And honestly, we see this a lot. I have, as I mentioned earlier, I have a lot of seasoned tax practitioners who come through either for the LLM or MT. This is the right point in their career. They're looking to branch out. They're looking to, as this person has said, find another discipline within tax. And so there's a myriad of options. First, there is a career management team in our career services office. They are a 2-person team that specifically works with students who have experience and are graduate students. The university recognizes that the needs of an undergrad or the needs of even a first-time lawyer are significantly different than those who have working experience and who are looking to transition or advance to other levels within their organization or to another practice area. And so the career management team offers, one-on-one personal advice, mentoring, helps prepare, resumes, mock interviews, those things like that, that are available to our students. The other sort of more informal approach is through our faculty. Our faculty do mentoring as well. Our full-time faculty are available for that type of advice. We have a professor of practice who meets with students, all the time, giving this type of advice of how to transition in different periods of your career. And because we offer so many electives, we have over 25 electives in different tax practice areas. It's easy to find someone in the practice area you're looking to move to get some mentorship. As I shared earlier, I've had lawyers who, worked for a long time, either as litigators, or I had someone who, worked in corporate tax for a very long time. And in both cases, they wanted to switch their careers into more estate planning and boutique advising. And, I pointed them in the right direction to our adjunct professors who do that as their, tax practice area specialty. And, that at least got them kickstarted into, what they should do, what types of experiences they should be looking for. And then if that's partnered with the advice the career management office can give, that, best prepares a student to, go out and take the right steps. So it's really that twofold approach between what a faculty member can offer and then what the career management team can offer.
All right, I'm gonna jump in here and read a few. So our next question is, if I am interested in first obtaining a SALT certificate and then possibly expanding into an MT, is that possible, and what is required to do this most efficiently?
That's a great question. I love the person's forethought there. Thank you, Catherine. Yes, we have this pretty frequently. I would say each admission cycle, we see this. And a lot of times it's because employers want, students to maybe start diving into the expertise, the electives offered, and then get to the core classes later. So the short answer is yes, it's totally doable. Again, it goes with our flexible format of, you choosing the path that works for you. This certainly falls into that. And what makes this easy is that it is the same admission requirements for the certificates as it is for the degrees. So if you are an accountant or a business professional and you want to take the SALT certificate, you're going to follow the same requirements as you would if you're applying for the Master of Taxation. There's no difference. Still need your transcripts, an essay, letter of recommendation, etc. And we do that to make sure that, you know, you're sitting in qualified company with your peers. So we don't have different requirements for certificates versus the degrees. So that's the first part of the question. And then to do it the most efficiently, you know, if you're pursuing the Master of Taxation, 5 of those, you know, of the electives that you take for the SALT certificate, which consists of 5 electives, easily transfer into the Master of Taxation. Same with the LLM, although you'd have 2 extra electives if you know, are interested in taking the estate planning certificate and then finishing your LLM. Those 3 electives from your certificate count towards the LLM. So there's that back and forth that count towards each other. So you're not duplicating unnecessary credits if you decide to pursue the certificate first and then the degree, or on the alternative, if you decide to pursue the degree first and then add on the certificate, the credits are reciprocal. You know, this is part of the advising that we would do. We would, you know, work with you to find out, you know, your time frame to complete the certificate first, and then look into, you know, when you would want to start taking the core classes. The only caveat I will add in the interest of full transparency is that the certificates are not eligible for federal financial aid. They are as a standalone certificate, they're not federal aid eligible, where the degrees are financial aid eligible. So that's just something to keep in mind, that if you pursue a standalone degree, a standalone certificate, they're not eligible for federal direct loans. But otherwise, in this scenario that the person asked, it would work fine. You could start with the SART classes. There's 5 classes there. And then we would transition you internally into one of the degree options to complete. You still have those 5 years to complete overall. Great question.
All right, we've got a few more. The Q&A is popping, which we love to see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So the next one is, how does the instruction method for our programs compare with the traditional law school method? Is it Socratic or a more traditional lecture style, or does it vary by professor?
That's another really great question. I love all the thinking that's going into this. So I would say, by and large, the law school method of the Socratic method is not typically followed, like, at least in terms of there's no blind calling out in class. Now, some of the faculty who teach in our program also teach in the law school and teach the JDs, and they do use the Socratic method there. But in our program, it's more, they use what they call a problem-based approach, and it's, you know, providing an example and then asking what type of case law would apply, and, you know, going through, you know, different scenarios from real world practice and finding out, you know, what part of the code or regulations apply. So it doesn't follow that methodology of the traditional Socratic approach does. And I would say that's probably similar to how all graduate tax programs are structured. Now, just to back up a bit in terms of grading, you know, in traditional law school, there is always a curve used. And we use a curve in our program as well, except it does not have to follow the regiment of the law school curve. A curve is only used to benefit a student and not to, you know, for ranking purposes, only allow so many A's, only allow so many B's. So that is not the approach. The curve is definitely used for the benefit of the students and of the class. So that is another differentiator. And then a final differentiator, I would say, is in a lot of law school classes, you know, you go the full semester, there's no other tests or exams until the end, and you get to the final, and then you have a final exam that's worth 100% of your grade. That's also not the approach we use. The law faculty who created this program did so being very mindful of wanting the students to have a sense of how they are pacing in the program, how they're doing throughout each week. And so each week there is an assessment on Sunday evenings. In our 8-week session, there are usually 6 of those, and then there's nothing in the 7th week, so students have time to study for the final. Those 6 quizzes usually make up about 30 to 40% of the grade. 1 to 2 of the quizzes are dropped, and then the final, 30 to, the final 60 to 70% of the grade is the final exam. So by the time the 8th week comes and it's time for the final, students have a good sense of how they've been pacing, are able to reach out for meaningful feedback from their professor and kind of know what to expect in terms of question style when they get to the final. So I know that was a longer answer than the person was probably looking for, but I like to be complete in the information I provide and give a better perspective of at least how it works from grading to test taking to the lecture itself.
I mean, that's helpful. I'm sure you answered a few questions that people had in their minds and hadn't typed out yet. So we've got 2 more questions so far. Keep them coming, guys. We're here as long as you need us. So next question is about scholarships. So are scholarships available? If so, how do you apply, and how much funding is available?
Yes, so I am happy to share that we do have some limited scholarships available. As we are a part-time program and not a full-time program, we don't have the resources of offering, bigger, fuller scholarships, or assistantships or things like that often come along with full-time graduate programs. However, we do have some smaller scholarships that, usually offer a smaller percentage off of tuition. And we have a separate application process for that that's made available through the same system that you'll complete an admission application. It's just an extra page really to fill out. We don't have the determined amount that we'll be using for the fall semester, just that we have a limited pool that we've been given from our budget office, and as part of that, you'll complete a separate application that will be reviewed by the admission committee and notified later in the cycle as to how the awards are given.
All right, and then one last question. So this one is about application deadlines. They're just saying that the application deadline for fall is July 31st. And then the term starts on August 29th. So that's a fairly quick turnaround time between, application deadline and start of the term. So how quickly are application decisions received? Is that timeline, too tight for someone? That kind of thing.
Sure. No, that's a great question, and it's good for planning. So we have a rolling admission process, and we right now are focusing on the fall cycle, but we always have an application open, and that allows us to have the admission committee meet and render decisions rather quickly. So typically decisions are rendered within 7 business days. It's not that you'll be waiting to hear from us until after July 31st. So for example, if you complete your application June 10th, you should hear from us before June 20th, and then that would give ample time to prepare for classes. Usually we make sure, we feel that 1 month time frame of having the application deadline due, July 31st gives students about 4 weeks to still plan and get mentally ready for going back to school. One of the things that's beneficial about the program is that for the first class that you take, whether you're an LLM or an MT student, the first class in the program is our survey of tax class. And that does not require the purchase of textbooks for the class. The professor has put together an array of materials that he makes available in our learning management system. So, if you're accepted and then, having to get things ready with your employer maybe, or just to get your family ready that you're going to go back to school, you don't have the added pressure of having to get a textbook within that time frame. We also, just going down the line, make textbook lists available early on to help you with that type of planning. And then we also have an orientation course that, again, is very quick, but allows students to kind of get immersed in our learning management system and see how it works, see how Zoom works, how the recordings operate, how to take a sample quiz. And our professor who teaches the Survey of Tax course opens up his course early so that students can get in there, see what it's like, maybe make their first discussion board posting. He holds what he calls a week 0 class, where the week before classes start, you can go in, see how your technology is working, troubleshoot any items that may need that help. So through that type of outreach and the resources we make available, we have found that, that 4-week time frame is enough for our students to get ready. But if for some reason, things just don't align, you can work with us and we can see if there's anything we can offer from our end, or perhaps you need to start later in the session, like with the fall B session instead of the A session. We've done that to accommodate students as well.
All right, the questions just keep coming in, so I'm just going to keep reading.
Yeah,
them.
keep going. I love it.
So next one is about tuition. So are tuition payments due upfront for the entire year, or does it go, more by the semester? And just kind of explain what that process is like.
Absolutely. So we do not bill for the entire year. You are only charged for the classes that you're enrolled in. So tuition is done one semester at a time. And the rule of thumb is that tuition is due by the first day of classes. So, usually the bursar's office will issue a bill about maybe 4 to 6 weeks before the term begins. And, they're expecting that payment is in place, or that a payment plan is in place, or financial aid or employer assistance is all in place by the first day of classes. We do not follow the rule of thumb, as you may have seen with other universities or programs, where tuition is automatically raised each year. Actually, our tuition rate is the same as it was for last year. It's not changing for this coming year. We have had to raise tuition as, expenses do go up with course refreshes, of course, and our technology licenses, but we don't just raise tuition for the sake of it. And so, the current students in our program right now are going to be paying the same rate as they just paid this last year. There's no change. And there are an array of payment methods that the bursar's office makes available. Like I mentioned, they have a payment plan that stretches payments over the full term, like the 3 months of a term. A lot of students will make use of that instead of having to pay the lump sum of tuition up front. And then our Office of Financial Aid would walk through how loan options work for the program and what enrollment status you need for that. And actually, we're going to be having a financial aid webinar, I think, yes, later this month, the end of the month. We'll go over more of those financing options with our experts from the financial aid team.
Yes, and I think we're planning to post that link on our last slide.
Yes.
So you guys can head over and register for that now if you're interested in learning more about financial aid. But we did have one last question come in, so we'll answer that and then probably wrap up Q&A.
Sounds good. Yep.
So if someone's interested in kind of browsing around the fall catalog of what we're going to be offering this fall, when is that going to be released?
Great question. Actually, our fall catalog of courses is getting sent out to our students today, and so that current students can see it. And we can also make available, when we send out the recording information, we'll include a link to how to look in our catalog. It is open to the public. And we can send out, what the sample schedule looks like. As I mentioned, the first class in the program is Survey of Tax, but you have the other 6 courses to look at. And then, like I said, a wide array of electives. We have over 25 electives. We've worked hard over the past 4 to 5 years in moving out most of them online. And so, all of our certificates are available online. We have lots of corporate tax electives online, and just, some, sort of boutique electives as well, like public charities, law and compliance. We're offering a new course this summer that's called Introduction to Taxation of Financial Products and Entities. It's a mouthful, but the Vice President of Tax at Aramark is teaching that for us, and we're excited to bring that on board. We typically have 1 to 2 new courses a year. We just also added an international tax course that covers outbound transactions that's being offered right now for the first time online. So like I said, we like to keep things fresh. We, poll students to find out what, other courses they're interested in. We get insight from our advisory board for the same thing. And so, keeping an eye on our curriculum page on our website will also be another great way of seeing, what's to come or what you can take in the program. So thank you, Catherine and Tim, and everyone for sending in your questions. I will proceed with wrapping up our slides here so that we stay on time. We kind of already talked about this in the Q&A, but just want to make it available again about our admissions timeframe. So the admission application deadline for this fall cycle is July 31st. So you still have plenty of time to get that in. The full explanation of what is required for admissions is on our website. You'll see that it's rather straightforward. We recognize that, our population, again, are working adults, and, jumping through hoops is not something that their day can allow. And so we try to keep that very easy and streamlined. 1 letter of recommendation, 1 essay, an application completed online, a resume, and providing proof of your credential or your standardized test score, et cetera, for the Master of Taxation. So it's very streamlined and straightforward. Like I mentioned, the application decisions are usually done within 7 to 10 business days. The admission committee meets frequently so that we can keep decisions rolling out as quickly as we can and make that happen. And then the first week of our fall semester for the fall A session is August 29th. So classes that week will be Wednesday, August 31st, and Thursday, September 1st, since we offer classes on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And the fall B session, like I said earlier, will start sometime in the middle of fall. I think it's around October 24th or so. I wanted to put up our contact information so you know where to reach us. We will certainly be sending out information after this, including a fee waiver, an application fee waiver code, so that you can waive out of paying the $50 application fee. But here's also our email information for you to reach out to us directly. And then, as Catherine said earlier, we did want to highlight the upcoming webinars we have. So we're partnering with our financial aid office here at the law school for a financing option webinar on Wednesday, June 29th at 1 p.m. It will also be recorded. And then at the end of July, we're gathering together some of our current students for a panel discussion on what the Villanova student experience is like. I really, really enjoy the panel discussions we have. We get to hear from students directly. They can provide more insight into how they network, how they manage, school along with life, along with work, what electives they've been taking, sort of how do they structure their week. They've been able to give all that kind of insight, and also like how it may have helped their career already. So make sure you add those to your calendar. The registration for both of them is open and available at the links you see on your screen, which we will also send out in our follow-up email to all of you. So that is it for our session today. Thank you so much for your great questions and for your time. We look forward to hearing from you. And if there's anything that we can provide to you with some more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. Thank you and have a good rest of your week. Take care.